Welcome to the Momentum Playbook. Here's a hard truth that most people don't want to hear: intelligence is a baseline. It's the price of entry. The market doesn't reward how smart you are. It rewards speed and presence. It rewards execution. While you're perfecting your plan, someone else is executing and building wealth. While you're waiting for the perfect moment, someone else is shipping, failing, learning, and shipping again. This video is about making the shift. From paralyzed planner to unstoppable executor. From endless analysis to relentless action. From waiting for permission to creating your own momentum. If you've ever felt stuck in the planning phase, this is your wake-up call. In the next few minutes, we're going to break down the frameworks that will help you transition from thinking to doing. Because here's the truth: the world doesn't need more brilliant planners. It needs people who actually ship. Let's start with the biggest trap that keeps most people stuck: the illusion of complete readiness. Here's the reality. The market does not reward the most beautiful idea. It rewards the available idea. The one that shows up first. The one that's actually in the world, not just in someone's head. Every hour you spend polishing an untested concept in isolation is an hour surrendered to a faster competitor. While you're tweaking fonts and rewriting slides, someone else is launching, getting feedback, and improving in real time. Readiness is a delusion. It's a comfortable excuse that postpones your life. You tell yourself, I just need one more thing. Just one more piece of data. Just a little more time. And then you wait. And wait. And the world moves on without you. Here's the counterintuitive truth: the information you actually need only appears after you launch. Not before. After. You don't learn by planning. You learn by doing. You don't validate by thinking. You validate by shipping. The market doesn't care about your intentions. It cares about your results. So stop waiting. Stop polishing. Start shipping. Because the only way to discover if your idea works is to put it out into the world and let reality tell you the truth. And if you're worried about being perfect, let's look at exactly why perfection is actually your biggest enemy. Now, let's look at two different archetypes. Two different ways of approaching the world. And honestly, most of us have been both at some point. On one side, you have the perfectionist. This is the person who searches for absolute certainty. They want to know everything before they take a single step. They believe they need a flawless master plan, a perfect blueprint, before they can even begin. And they'll spend a year developing that plan. But here's the problem: during that entire year, they get zero feedback. Zero customers. Zero real-world validation. Their assumptions go completely untested. And the psychological weight of needing to be perfect becomes a heavy burden they carry every single day. Now look at the other archetype, the executor. This person doesn't search for certainty. They search for measurable progress. They don't wait for a perfect plan. They launch an imperfect, functional prototype today. Right now. This week. They don't see their work as a final product. They see it as a strategic asset, something that generates real market data. Every launch gives them feedback. Every iteration makes them smarter. They trade perfection for momentum. And the end result? The perfectionist is still polishing. The executor is growing. Iterative growth. Real market validation. Compounding momentum. The gap between these two archetypes isn't intelligence. It's action. So the question is, which one are you? Because if you're leaning toward the perfectionist, you're not alone. Most people are. But there's a reason why the executor keeps winning, and it's not because they're smarter. It's because they've figured out something fundamental about how action actually works. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Here's something most people get completely backwards. They wait for the right feeling before they take action. They wait for motivation to strike. They wait to feel ready. But here's the truth: waiting for the right feeling is a trap. Movement generates energy, not the other way around. You don't wait to be motivated to start. You start, and the motivation follows. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates more action. Think about it. Every time you've procrastinated on something, a workout, a difficult conversation, a project you've been avoiding, what was the hardest part? It wasn't the task itself. It was the moment just before you started. The initiation. Once you actually begin, something shifts. The resistance dissolves. Visionary builders understand this. That's why they publicly commit to impossible timelines. They're not waiting for perfect conditions. They're using public commitment to force action. They create external pressure because they know it's the fastest way to break through internal resistance. Now, here's the most powerful tool you'll ever learn to overcome that initial resistance, the 2-minute rule. Force yourself to start the task for exactly 120 seconds. That's it. Just 2 minutes. Open the document. Write the first sentence. Pick up the phone. Make the first call. What you'll discover is that the psychological friction exists entirely in the initiation, not in the continuation. Once you break through that initial resistance, momentum takes over. 2 minutes becomes 10. 10 becomes an hour. And before you know it, you're halfway there. The hardest part is always the beginning. So stop waiting. Start for 2 minutes. And let momentum carry you the rest of the way. Now, if you're still worried about not having enough information to start, the next insight is going to completely free you from that fear. Because you don't need 100% certainty. You actually need something far less. So you've started. You've broken through the initial resistance. But now a new fear creeps in: do I have enough information to keep going? This is where most people stall. They convince themselves they need one more data point, one more study, one more opinion before they can move forward. And they stay stuck in research mode, endlessly. Here's the reality: more data rarely changes the core choice. It just consumes time. If you're constantly waiting for validation, you're not making progress. You're procrastinating with a spreadsheet. The truth is, you don't need 100% certainty to move. You need about 70%. The 70% information threshold is a simple rule. Once you have 70% of the information you need, you have enough to decide and act. Because the remaining 30%, it will only reveal itself after you've launched. The market, the customer, reality itself, they will give you the data you actually need. But not all decisions are the same. You need to distinguish between two types. Path A: irreversible decisions. These are one-way doors. High stakes. Impossible to undo. Think of major career changes, buying a company, or moving to another country. For these decisions, you move slowly. You analyze deeply. You don't rush. You want to be as close to certainty as possible. Path B: reversible decisions. These are two-way doors. Course correction is easy and cheap. Testing a new product. Trying a new marketing channel. Reaching out to a potential customer. For these decisions, you use the 10-minute limit. Give yourself 10 minutes to decide. Act. And then adjust based on what you learn. The irony is that most people treat reversible decisions like irreversible ones. They overthink the small stuff. They waste weeks, sometimes months, on decisions that could be tested and course-corrected in a matter of days. Don't be that person. Learn to spot the difference. Protect the one-way doors. Rush through the two-way ones. Because speed, especially on the small decisions, is what separates the planners from the executors. And once you've committed to action, there's a specific sequence that can compress months of planning into just a few days. Let's talk about that next. Now we're going to compress months of uncertainty into just 3 days. This is where the magic happens. The 72-hour sprint sequence is simple. You give yourself exactly 72 hours, 3 days, to take an idea from concept to real-world test. No endless analysis. No weeks of refinement. Just action. Fast, focused, and decisive. Day 1, you commit to a decision or take a concrete step. Day 2, you expose it to reality, talk to people, gather information, face the consequences. Day 3, you evaluate what you've learned and adjust your path. The goal here is not to succeed immediately. The goal is to break the paralysis. The goal is to stop the endless cycle of what if and replace it with real experience. You're not waiting for certainty, you're creating it through action. The 72-hour sprint isn't just for businesses. It applies to life's biggest decisions too. Take James, who spent 3 years dreaming of moving to Spain but kept postponing because of work, family, and fear of the unknown. He gave himself 72 hours. Day 1, he researched visa requirements and cost of living. Day 2, he had conversations with 3 expats living in Spain, asking them the real questions, not the Google ones. Day 3, he booked a one-way flight. Not to move permanently, just to spend a month there, testing the reality. That trip confirmed everything he needed to know. He moved 6 months later. Or consider Maria, a high school student torn between 2 degrees, medicine and engineering. She was terrified of making the wrong choice. She gave herself 72 hours. Day 1, she sat down with 2 doctors and shadowed one for an afternoon. Day 2, she did the same with 2 engineers. Day 3, she went with her gut, and the data she'd collected. She chose medicine. No regrets. What happens in those 72 hours is usually this: the things you worried about the most turn out to be irrelevant. And the things you never even considered become the most critical factors. You discover what actually matters, not what you assumed would matter. The 72-hour sprint forces you to stop thinking and start doing. It replaces theoretical planning with real-world data. It's about discovering that your biggest insights don't come from sitting in a room, they come from taking a step, any step, into the real world. So when you take that step, don't be afraid of what you'll find. Because what you find, whether it's confirmation or redirection, is the most valuable data you'll ever get. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Let's talk about something most people try to avoid: failure. Here's the truth that changes everything. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the raw material. It's the data you need to get better. The only real failure is not extracting the lesson. Most people treat failure as a psychological defeat. They internalize it. They let it define them. They say, "I failed, therefore I am a failure." But that's not what failure actually is. Failure is just information. It's a signal telling you that something didn't work. It's feedback from reality. And if you can separate the emotional response from the mechanical lesson, you can turn every setback into a stepping stone. Think about it. Every successful person you admire has failed more times than you've tried. The difference isn't that they avoided failure. It's that they extracted the data and kept going. They treated every setback as a mechanical data point, something to be analyzed, understood, and used for the next attempt. Here's the mindset shift: instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this?" Instead of feeling defeated, get curious. Become a scientist of your own life. Treat your failures as experiments that simply didn't produce the expected result. This is how you build resilience. Not by avoiding failure, but by redefining it. Not by protecting your ego, but by extracting the data. Failure loses its power when you stop seeing it as a judgment and start seeing it as a teacher. So the next time something doesn't work out, don't run from it. Don't hide from it. Sit with it. Ask yourself, what is this teaching me? What information does this setback contain? And how can I use this data to make my next attempt better? Because that's what separates the people who stay stuck from the people who keep growing. The ability to extract data from failure. And once you master that, you'll never fear failure again. Now, let's talk about how to take that data and multiply it into something much bigger. Because hard work alone isn't enough. You need leverage. You've started executing. You've learned from failure. Now it's time to scale. Not by working harder, but by working smarter. Here's the distinction that changes everything: hard work is linear. Leverage is exponential. Working harder means doing more of the same. It means adding hours to your day, effort to your tasks, energy to your output. And there's a ceiling to that. You only have so many hours. You only have so much energy. Linear growth eventually plateaus. Leverage, on the other hand, is about multiplying your impact without multiplying your effort. It's about decoupling your time from your output. It's about finding the mechanisms that allow you to achieve more with less. There are 4 key multipliers that can transform your execution. First, systems. Create repeatable processes that do the heavy lifting. Instead of figuring things out from scratch every time, build systems that automate and streamline. A system is any process that turns a one-time effort into a reusable asset. The effort you invest in building a system is paid back many times over. Second, people. You can't do everything yourself. The most successful executors build teams, delegate, and collaborate. Leverage other people's time, talent, and energy. Not because you're lazy, because you're focused. You can't multiply your impact if you're doing everything alone. Third, technology. Use tools to amplify your reach. Software, automation, artificial intelligence, these aren't just luxuries. They're leverage. The right technology can do in minutes what would take you weeks. Fourth, capital. Money is leverage. Whether it's investing in a better system, hiring the right people, or accessing better technology, capital accelerates execution. It's not about being rich, it's about being strategic with the resources you have. Here's the key: most people stay stuck in addition. They work harder and harder, burning out without breaking through. The executors, on the other hand, are constantly looking for the multipliers. They're not just doing more, they're finding ways to do better. So ask yourself, where can you apply leverage? Where can you build a system instead of just working harder? Where can you delegate, automate, or invest to multiply your results? Because the gap between linear effort and exponential impact is leverage. And once you start using it, there's no going back. Now, if leverage is about multiplying your efforts, the next question is, where should you actually focus that multiplied energy? Because focus, not effort, is what separates winners from everyone else. Here's a hard truth about execution: most people fail not because they don't work hard enough, but because they spread themselves too thin. You get excited about a new opportunity. It looks promising. It feels like growth. So you say yes. Then another one comes along. And another. And another. Before you know it, you're juggling so many things that nothing gets the attention it deserves. You're busy, but you're not moving the needle. This is the trap of the good opportunity. It looks attractive. It feels productive. But it steals focus from what really matters. The art of execution is saying no to good opportunities so you can fiercely protect the great ones. It's about strategic ignorance, deliberately choosing to ignore things that don't align with your core priorities. And there are 2 simple filters you can use to cut through the noise. The revenue filter. Ask yourself, does this specific action directly drive growth or revenue? If the answer is no, it's a distraction. You can dress it up as important, or necessary, or someone asked me to do it. But if it's not moving the needle, it's eating your time. The chop. Here's a brutal but clarifying question: what would actually happen if you eliminated the bottom 50% of your tasks today? The honest answer? Probably nothing. Most of what you're doing is noise. It's activity that feels productive but delivers 0 real results. Cut it. This is what it means to practice strategic ignorance. You deliberately choose to ignore the things that don't matter so you can fully commit to the things that do. It's not laziness. It's discipline. Think about the most successful people you know. They don't do more than everyone else. They do less. But they do the right things with intensity and focus. They've learned to say no to anything that doesn't align with their core priorities. So take a hard look at your life right now. How many things are you doing that don't actually move the needle? How many activities are you holding on to out of habit or obligation? What would happen if you simply stopped doing them? The answer is almost always nothing, except you'd suddenly have time and energy for what actually matters. Once you've cleared the noise and focused your energy on the critical few, you're ready for the final piece of the puzzle, turning execution into a perpetual motion machine. Now we're going to talk about the secret to making execution unstoppable. It's about creating a system that feeds itself, a perpetual motion machine of action, learning, and growth. Here's the key insight: momentum compounds. Just like compound interest in finance, each action you take builds on the last. A small step today creates a slightly larger step tomorrow. That step creates even more momentum the day after. Over time, the accumulation of small actions becomes unstoppable. The compound execution wheel is a 6-step cycle that turns action into momentum. Each step feeds the next, creating a self-sustaining loop. Step 1: Fast decision. The first step of the wheel is speed. You make a decision quickly using the 10-minute limit for reversible choices. You don't agonize. You don't overthink. You decide and move forward. Step 2: Generates market data. Once the decision is made, you act immediately. You launch. You test. You expose your idea to the real world. Every launch generates real-world feedback: what works, what doesn't, what people actually want. You're not guessing anymore. You're collecting data from the market itself. This is the 72-hour sprint in action, 3 days of focused execution that generates more learning than months of planning ever could. Step 3: Identifies leverage points. As you analyze the market data, patterns begin to emerge. You start to see what's actually moving the needle. You identify the actions that generate the most impact for the least effort. These are your leverage points. This is where you apply the multipliers: systems, people, technology, and capital, to amplify your impact. You stop working harder and start working smarter. You move from linear effort to exponential results. Step 4: Refines the system. Now you take everything you've learned and refine your system. You ask yourself 3 golden questions: what should I start doing? What should I stop doing? What should I keep doing? You eliminate what isn't working. You double down on what is. You introduce new elements that could accelerate your progress. This is where you move from random activity to a structured, repeatable system. Step 5: Yields outsized results. This is where the magic happens. By focusing on the critical few, the 20% of actions that drive 80% of your results, you achieve outsized outcomes. You're no longer spreading yourself thin across dozens of activities. You're concentrating your energy on the handful of actions that truly move the needle. This is the power of strategic ignorance, saying no to good opportunities so you can say yes to the great ones. The results are disproportionate to the effort because you've eliminated the noise and focused on what actually matters. Step 6: Attracts new opportunities. This is where the wheel becomes a perpetual motion machine. When you consistently execute, deliver results, and build momentum, something remarkable happens. New opportunities start finding you. People reach out. Doors open. Resources become available. The momentum you've built creates a gravitational pull that attracts more of what you want. And then the cycle begins again, faster, stronger, and with more power than before. This is the compound effect of execution. This is how you turn action into an unstoppable force. This is how momentum compounds. One decision leads to action. Action leads to feedback. Feedback leads to learning. Learning leads to adjustment. Adjustment leads to faster action. And the cycle repeats, each time with more power, more speed, and more confidence. The wheel is always spinning. The question is, are you on it? Or are you standing still, watching it turn without you? Because once you step onto the wheel, everything changes. And that brings us to the final piece, the one that ties everything together. The one that turns knowledge into action. We've covered a lot. The 2-minute rule. The 70% information threshold. The 72-hour sprint. The multipliers. The critical few. The compound execution wheel. But here's the truth, none of it matters if you don't actually do anything. Knowledge without execution is just entertainment. It's consumption disguised as progress. You can watch all the videos, read all the books, take all the notes, but until you take action, nothing changes. The world is full of brilliant planners who never ship. Smart people who stay stuck in analysis paralysis. Talented individuals who let perfect be the enemy of done. Don't be one of them. This is where the 24-hour protocol comes in. It's simple. It's unforgiving. And it works. Here's how it works, the clock starts right now. Your reality 5 years from today is entirely dependent on the momentum you generate in the next 24 hours. Not next week. Not next month. Now. Step 1, choose exactly one insight from this playbook. Not 2. Not 3. 1. The one that resonated with you the most. The one you know you need to act on. Step 2, execute one micro step today to test it. Not the whole thing. Just one step. One action. One small move forward. Open the document. Make the call. Send the email. Start the prototype. Just do something. Step 3, make that step public. Tell someone. Post it online. Commit out loud. Because when you make it public, you create accountability. You create pressure. And pressure is what turns intention into action. Then start. Right now. Today. Not tomorrow. Not Monday. Not when you feel ready. Because you will never feel ready. Readiness is a feeling, not a condition. And waiting for it is the most expensive delay you can afford. The 24-hour protocol is your challenge. Your wake-up call. Your line in the sand. One insight. One micro step. One public commitment. And then momentum takes over. Because the hardest part of any journey is the first step. Once you take it, the second step gets easier. The third easier still. Before you know it, you're not walking, you're running. So here's the question, what are you waiting for? The clock is ticking. Your future self is counting on you. Not the perfect version of you. Not the fully prepared version. The version that starts. The version that ships. The version that builds momentum. That version is available right now. All you have to do is begin. One insight. One micro step. Today. Start.